It's Wednesday. You know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., the Southern California Writers Association turns our Facebook page over to a new and different author to talk about their work. This morning, we're happy to welcome A.E. Wasserman. Good morning.
Hi, happy Hump Day. I'm really happy to be here today to share it with you this morning. I write the LANGSFORD series, historical mystery thriller books. Think Sherlock Holmes meets Downton Abbey. But I wanted to talk to you first about what it's like being an author of a series, what it's like living with a series. It's not easy. First, I must warn you, if you write more than one book, series or not, beware. Here's what happened to me. Just before the COVID quarantine hit, and after the 5th book in the LANGSFORD series was released, I went to visit Yeshaya Familot, a rabbi friend of ours who lives up in Palo Alto in the Bay Area. At lunch that day, he asked me a perfectly normal question, but I was totally unprepared for it. Let's talk about character X. I'm curious to know more and why you wrote this individual like you did. Now, you have to understand I had 5 books out over the past 5 years at the time, and character X was not someone I had thought about in a while. I was on to book 6, and with books 7 and 8 brewing on the back burner, I was caught like a deer in the headlights. I'd invented character X, for goodness sake. Still, I couldn't remember much about this one. Good Lord, what was wrong with me? To further exacerbate this scenario, let me tell you about the rabbi. He'd gone to Oxford, you know, the one in England, had taught at Stanford, was director of Hillel there for over 50 years, and has a near photographic memory. He's not a rabbi with a congregation. He's a counselor. Or rather, he's a therapist. I would never have thought to ask him to read my books, but apparently he had, and he'd read all of them. I was absolutely horrified. It's not like my books are profound Pulitzers. I wish they were, but they're not. And I figured that's the only kind of book he probably would ever read. So every iota of writer's insecurity mushroomed up like an atomic bomb. This brilliant man had read my books, each and every one of them, and now he wanted to discuss a character. I must have failed to develop it properly, why else would he bring it up? So my poor brain was scrambling at warp speed to reassemble everything I'd known about character X, who had been, I thought, a delicious villain in the story. Well, what I had intended, at least. I could hear my gray matter neurons firing away like the 4th of July, and I delayed my response. I'd taken a few sips, probably gulps, of the kosher wine. No, not Manischewitz, you know, the real wine. So recalling this particular villain bit by bit and with fear and great trepidation, I began a conversation with the rabbi. We chatted about character X's motivations, personal strong points, personal weaknesses, inability to control hatred and revenge. The rabbi, my brilliant friend, said how he loved I'd written this character and assured me I'd developed those character flaws perfectly. This from a psychotherapist. I tried not to fall out of my chair. I just convinced myself that character X was dreadful, unbelievable to any reader, in spite of my bevy of beta readers and my own professional editor working with me on the book. See how insecurity works? But no, I was whiplash, going from absolute knowledge of total failure to validation that each and every word, sentence, paragraph, chapter, whatever I'd ever written was deemed worthy. Never be caught off guard. I went home and reread all of my own books. So my point here is keep up with your own books or series, because you never know when you'll find a reader who wants to talk about your book you wrote 5-10 years earlier. And with any series, the main protagonist has a character arc. So an occasional reread is a good reminder to the author of exactly where in that arc a particular book lies. So back to the LANGSFORD series and living with this series. Yes, these are historical mystery thrillers, but I emphasize the mystery thriller part. See, when I say historical, eyes glaze over. So a good story, though, is a good story regardless of the era. And any reader of Shakespeare's understands that human nature has the same virtues and vices and remains steady. And the great fun is, as with an author of mystery thrillers, I get to kill people, just in the books, but still, it's quite rewarding. The LANGSFORD series, I said it's Sherlock Holmes meets Downton Abbey. LANGSFORD is always in trouble, one way or another. He's an Englishman, peerage, He likes to stir the pot in spite of being an aristocrat. He never fits in with London society, although he's good at faking it, as many peerage were. Plus, he's in love with someone he can never marry. Of course, one must give the reader angst. And there's lots of possibilities with that, because during the Victorian era, everything was controlled, everything was concealed, unlike today where everything is revealed. The Sherlock Holmes aspect, Langsford seems to get himself mired in serious trouble of some sort or another. Well, I do take the blame for that. Or his friends get in trouble. And in order to get out of trouble, whoever it is, Langsford has to find the bad guys, the murderers, the traitors, the spies, while surviving the twists and turns. The first novel, 1884, can you see it? 1884, the story of espionage and international intrigue is exactly that, espionage. This one was wrapped around the core of a romantic tale where a boy meets a girl, based on a true story that took place in London, by the way. Spies and terror attacks raised their ugly heads, throwing Langsford in the middle when all he wanted to do was help a friend meet a young shop girl, even though it meant crossing the social boundaries. Let me interject a little bit about Lord Langsford here. As I said, the original tale of 1884, No Boundaries, was boy meets girl. And it was boring. It was extremely boring to write. And so it follows that the readers would be extremely bored as well. So I was struggling with it. Now, I'm nocturnal. I write at night, often until 4 a.m. So I'm lucky to be awake and somewhat coherent here. I do have my British breakfast tea. But about 2 a.m., I'm writing, and suddenly there's a shadowy figure that has joined our hero and love character in a carriage. Now, this person was out of focus. Was he young, old, rich, poor, boy, girl? I had no idea who it was. It turns out it was a guy, but who? Slowly, he revealed himself, but by then it might have been 3 a.m. And no, I had not been drinking, although maybe I should have been. I kept writing. By 4 a.m., he didn't yet have a name, but it turns out he was a best friend of the hero in love. This stranger, who slowly let me know about his friendship with the hero, was young, about 6 feet, probably in his 20s, about 6 feet tall, a wealthy English lord, nice guy, basically, gentleman, peerage. And well, he elbow bumped the hero in love out of first place and took over the tale. And the story sort of exploded like dynamite after that. Yep, dynamite, terrace, love, and historically accurate as well. My favorite reviews of this book from a British critic called it atmospherically rich. Hey, I'll take that one. Langsford has proven to be popular, and readers seem to love him, and I rather enjoy him too. He's far smarter than I am. One scene I wrote ended up proving that Langsford had to convince Sir Edmund Henderson, who is the political appointee of the police commissioner to Scotland Yard, to make an exception to the law. Going into the scene, I had no idea how Langsford was going to pull it off, and he needed to, or the story was ruined. Well, I just started typing. Was this 2 a.m. again? Maybe 3. And Langsford just took over. He countered, I was so proud of him. He countered every protest with the most logical, intelligent reply and ended up winning the debate. I was just amazed. And thus he went on to survive for the next book, creating the series. The second novel is 1886, Ties That Bind, a story of politics, graft, and greed. It follows Langsford to the United States. This one takes place in San Francisco, not London. One of Langsford's odd characteristics or traits is that, and he's highly criticizes British society for that, is he loves to oversee what his bankers invest in. Now remember, one never spoke of money nor dealt with it if one were peerage. But Langsford thinks of investing as a type of gambling. He loves poker and all games. So he invested in American railroads. After all, the bonds were sold in the London Stock Exchange, and London was the financial center of the world at the time. So his wealth had doubled. So for fun, he's traveling across the American Transcontinental Railroad in 1886, experiencing and enjoying his investments, if you will. And then he lands in San Francisco, and where he dines with the railroad barons that run the Southern Pacific Railroad. Oh, and boy, there's tales all over the place about the Southern Pacific Railroad. But he meets Stanford, Crocker, and Hopkins. And by the way, anybody who happens to know about the railroad barons, Huntington is the fourth one, but He's the uncle of the Huntington in Pasadena. And this Huntington spent the majority of his time back east because he was always lobbying Congress. But that's, again, a whole other story. Anyway, Langsford is in San Francisco and is after the dinner with the railroad barons when he unexpectedly meets a ranch girl who packs a pistol in her purse. And one thing leads to another. He ultimately gets tangled in the road, politics of the day, congressional issues, and find his own life as well as his heart in danger. I do manage to kill a lot of people in this book, a few more than in the first of the series, but there's always the question. Will Langsford or won't he? Will she or won't she? Will Langsford find the killer or will the killer find him? Alas, spoiler alert. Hang on a second. Yeah, spoiler. I'm just checking my time. Spoiler alert, Langsford does live to tell the tale and lands back in London for 1888, The Dead and the Desperate, a story of struggle, passion, and deceit. Being part of London's high society, Langsford must attend formal dinners and balls. And while all of these social galas are going on, Scotland Yard finds an unidentified, well-dressed corpse down by the docks. Twists and turns, abstinence and opium all result in more angst and more did he or didn't he? Will Scotland Yard decide to arrest him? Is he guilty or innocent? Did he even know? Oh, and I failed to mention an American beauty, what they called the American debutantes who went to London to exchange their wealth, because there was a lot of new money in the United States, particularly after the gold rush, for a title, because even though in New York, they didn't think that, we had classes, but they all wanted the rich young women to marry somebody so they could come back and be lady whatever. So the problem with in England at that time is that there was a long depression. The economy had really sunk. And so these American beauties went over. Vanderbilt was one of them. Camellia Vanderbilt went over there. And there's an American beauty in this story. And she's recently engaged. So again, more angst. In short, Langsford must face dire facts about the murder while wrestling with his heart over a lady promised to another. So a couple hints about this series. The even years in the series are full novels, around 350 pages. Each book has a theme threaded through it: terrorism, political graft and greed, addiction, immigration, racism, things that reminding us that society still deals with the same issues, only in modern terms today. And of course, there's a bit of romance, even sex. But these are not romance novels, and a dead body or two or more, genuine whodunit novels. But what about the odd-numbered years? The odd-numbered years are the spin-off tales. The first one, I just wanted to see if I could write it. It's the Notorious Black Bart, 1883, dime novel. Apparently, I could write one because it's been wildly popular, which really surprised me. Please note, dime novels are not ever accurate and therefore not historically accurate. Writers of these are considered the precursors of the paperback novels, and they simply took famous names like Annie Oakley, Wild Bill Hickok, Jesse James. I took Black Bart, who was a stagecoach robber here in California, and they wrote an imaginary tale around these names. Oddly enough, there are no dead bodies in this book. But definitely a good guy and a bad guy. Will he escape? Will he get caught? I just don't know. The next spin-off novella is a saga. It's 1885 Crossings. It follows a couple who immigrates to America. Of course, we're back with a dead body here and a wrongly accused hero. And there's a bit of a Henry here, for the man tries to protect the woman from what he knows, and she tries to protect him from what she knows, and they end up working at cross purposes. Angst from possibly being arrested, from being turned back from America's immigrants, and angst about simply surviving the voyage. And soon to be released, I think, first part of next year, 2022. 2022, that sounds so far in the future, but it's not. Soon to be released, 1887, The Day They Turned Off the Water. It's also a novella. Now, the characters are supposed to turn right during the plot, but they turn left. And while it does have a dead body, it has turned itself into a legal thriller. Well, so be it. I gave myself major angst while writing it, so I hope it does the same to the reader tenfold. This series has a momentum of its own, and the characters often have minds of their own. So this is life with my series. Writers just never know where their books are going to take them or where the readers will either. So happy hump day, everybody.
Well, that was great, Amanya. Thank you. Where can people find your books?
Well, always various bookstores. Adventure Inc. up here in Pine Mountain Club carries them, but you can always get them, of course, on Amazon. They're distributed worldwide. You can link to Barnes and Noble. They're on my website, which is www.aewasserman.com. Yeah, they're easy to find.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I wish you great luck on your collaboration project, which we're going to talk about for sure. I have to tease this is that, yes, Amanya is working with another author across the pond on collaborating on a book, and they brought a book editor in to help and work with them on their collaboration, which sounds like an amazing story in itself. So we'll talk about that next time.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Amanya. Good luck. And thank you, everybody, for being here. If you enjoyed this, please share this video with your friends and family. You can also look and find other videos like this on SCWA Writers Online, our YouTube channel. We have, I think, I'll have to check with Diana, but I think we're looking at coming up to 50 interviews. So there are plenty of books. If you're looking for something to read this summer, look there. All right, everybody, take care. Have a great week, and we will see you soon. Bye.